The woman's monthly normal vaginal bleeding, often called the period. There isn't one right age for a girl to get her period, but most girls get their first period about 2 years after their breasts start to develop, when they are between age 10 and 15.
Welcome to Education Channel 1. Unlock the world of knowledge with our diverse content lineup. Subscribe now to Education Channel 1 and embark on an enriching educational journey.
Two structures in the brain, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, produce complex hormones that stimulate the ovaries to make female sex hormones that start and control the menstrual cycle, and will continue till about age 51, usually lasting from 3 to 8 days. The menstrual cycle includes several phases. The first phase of the menstrual cycle begins on the first day of bleeding and lasts for about 14 days. The pituitary gland, located at the base of the brain, releases a hormone called follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH. This hormone causes one fluid-filled follicle containing a mature egg to develop. The maturing follicle produces the hormone called estrogen, which increases over and peaks in about day 12, and causes the lining of the uterus, endometrium, to become thicker and more enriched with blood vessels. On about day 14, the high amount of luteinizing hormone, LH, and FSH cause the egg to be released from the follicle. The high level of LH also causes a brief surge in testosterone, which increases sex drive. Right at the most fertile time of the cycle, after release, the egg enters the fallopian tube. Tiny hairs on the tube's lining help push it down the narrow passage towards the uterus. If the sperm cell can successfully meet an egg cell in the fallopian tube, then fertilization will take place. Once the egg is released, the follicle seals over, and this is called the corpus luteum. After the release of the egg, levels of FSH and LH decrease. The corpus luteum produces progesterone. If fertilization has occurred, the corpus luteum continues to produce progesterone, which prevents the endometrial lining from being shed. If the egg is not fertilized, it disintegrates after about 24 hours. Then the corpus luteum also disintegrates, which causes progesterone levels to drop, and signals the endometrial lining to begin shedding after about 14 days. The menstrual blood is partially blood and partially tissue from inside the uterus. It passes out of the body through the vagina. The period comes again every 28 days, from the first day of one period to the first day of the next. Besides bleeding from the vagina, you may have abdominal or pelvic cramping pain, lower back pain, headache, fatigue, mood swings, food craving, bloating and sore breasts. During ejaculation, nearly 300 million sperms move from the testes, through the tubes called the vas deferens, into the air of prostate. At this point, the prostate contracts, closing off the opening between the bladder and the urethra, releasing the fluid into the urethra, and pushing the semen on through. The semen form a thick fluid that is alkaline, in order to protect sperms from the acidic environment of the female vagina. The gel is liquefied by enzymes from the prostate gland. It also contains sugars to nourish the sperms. The seminal plasma is left in the vagina. Sperms use their tails to swim through the layers of cervical mucus that guard the entrance to the uterus. During ovulation, this barrier becomes thinner and changes its acidity, creating a friendlier environment for the sperms. On the other side, after releasing the egg, at about day 14 of the period, the egg arrives at a specific portion of the tube, called the ampular isthmic junction. It rests for another 30 hours. Fertilization occurs in this portion of the tube. Once the sperms have entered the uterus, contractions propel the sperms upward into the fallopian tubes. To meet the egg, sperms must travel from the vaginal to the fallopian tubes, a tough journey that few sperms survive. This process may be nature's way of allowing only the healthiest sperm to fertilize the egg in order to provide the best chances of having a healthy baby. The first sperms enter the tubes a few minutes after ejaculation. However, the first sperms are not likely to fertilize the egg. Motile sperms can survive in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. The magic happens in the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tube pushes the egg towards the uterus. Cilia push the sperms towards the egg. Also, the surrounding cells of the egg produce a chemical that attracts sperms. The sperm first burrow through the walls of the corona radiata. Then, upon contact with the zona pellucida, the sperm bind to the receptors in the zona pellucida. Then, the inside-filled cap, called the acrosome, releases its stored digestive enzymes. Finally, the sperm must fuse with the egg's plasma membrane. This event causes the egg membrane to change and prevent other sperms from attaching to it. Now attached, the sperm's nucleus, where the chromosomes are stored, enters the egg cell, looking for the egg's nucleus. Egg combines genetic material with the sperm to create a full set of chromosomal DNA, with 23 pairs of chromosomes that contain a unique copy of half the genes of the parent source. This is the blueprint for a whole new unique person that instantly determines gender, hair color, eye color, skin pigment and many other characteristics. The combined sperm and egg is called a zygote. It is the earliest development stage. It divides rapidly in the days following fertilization. The zygote then travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus. After fertilization, the zygote continues to divide and morph into a blastocyst ball of 16 cells, approximately 5 to 6 days after fertilization. It is smaller than the tip of a ballpoint pen. Only 20% to 30% of the fertilized eggs will reach the blastocyst stage. Embryos that survive this stage of development have a high implantation potential once transferred into the uterine cavity. The blastocyst hatches out of its shell and burrow into the uterine wall, endometrium, which serves as the source of oxygen and nutrients. About 4 weeks from the beginning of the last period, near the next period, the blastocyst has already begun to produce the pregnancy hormone to tell your ovaries to stop releasing eggs. From then on, the menstrual cycle passes. The blastocyst is called an embryo now. Home pregnancy tests might be able to get a positive result. At week 5, the circulatory system, brain and spinal cord are beginning to form. And the tiny heart has now started beating. The baby's heartbeats are about 54 million times before birth. The placenta provides oxygen and nutrients to the growing baby and removes waste products from the baby's blood via the umbilical cord. The nose, mouth and ears are starting to shape at week 6. At week 7 and 8, the embryo has doubled in size since last week's. Little hands and feet start to grow. At week 9 to 12 of pregnancy, the embryo is called a fetus. The baby is almost fully formed and has now completed the most critical portions. The facial features are more recognizable. The fetus head is rotated and bent towards the chest, and the fetus can occasionally touch its face. The diaphragm muscles start to grow. The reproductive, circulatory and urinary systems are all at an advanced stage of development. The fetus will urinate in the amniotic sac. This is a sign of the proper functioning of the fetus body. If the fetus is a girl, her ovaries contain millions of eggs. If the fetus is a boy, his testicles will already start producing testosterone, a male sex hormone, which is necessary for the development of his reproductive system. He or she is about 15 centimeters in size and about 15 grams in weight. The fetus maturity progresses until birth. The birth process, also known as labor and delivery, typically occurs in 3 stages: dilation and effacement of the cervix, delivery of the baby, and delivery of the placenta. Stage 1. Dilation and effacement of the cervix. Early labor. This phase is characterized by mild contractions that may be irregular and last around 12 to 18 hours, although it can vary greatly from woman to woman. During this time, the cervix begins to soften, thin out, and dilate. Active labor. Contractions become stronger, longer, and more frequent, occurring every 3 to 5 minutes and lasting about 45 to 60 seconds. The cervix continues to dilate, typically reaching about 6 to 8 centimeters. This stage can last around 6 to 12 hours. Transition. This is the most intense phase of labor. Contractions are very strong, coming every 2 to 3 minutes and lasting 60 to 90 seconds. The cervix fully dilates to 10 centimeters during this phase, allowing the baby to move into the birth canal. Transition can last anywhere from a few minutes to a couple of hours. Stage 2. Delivery of the baby. Once the cervix is fully dilated, the second stage begins, during which the mother pushes to deliver the baby. Contractions may still occur, but the urge to push becomes stronger. The baby's head moves through the birth canal, and with each contraction, the mother pushes until the baby's head emerges. After the head is out, the rest of the baby's body follows in 1 or more additional contractions. Once the baby is fully delivered, the umbilical cord is clamped and cut, and the newborn is placed on the mother's chest for skin-to-skin contact. Stage 3. Delivery of the placenta. After the baby is born, the uterus continues to contract to expel the placenta. This stage is often referred to as the afterbirth. It typically occurs within 15 to 30 minutes after the baby is born, but it can take longer. Contractions may continue as the placenta detaches from the uterine wall and is pushed out through the birth canal. Once the placenta is delivered, the uterus continues to contract to help control bleeding. Throughout the birth process, healthcare providers monitor both the mother and baby closely for any signs of complications and provide support and assistance as needed.